1, and we are live. Thank you so much for doing this, David.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
So I wanted, the first question I had, or kind of a cue here, was economics. Can you kind of talk about how your path led to that, or
Well, that's been a long
what's your
time
interest?
ago,
Okay.
and maybe other people have an experience like mine. I never had any intention whatsoever of becoming a professional economist. I had always intended to become a lawyer, but as it
Okay.
turns out, life circumstances frequently are different than you think they're going to turn out, and for a whole host of reasons that I won't bore anybody with. It turns out that I went to North Carolina State University and got an undergraduate degree in economics, even though I'd started out as a computer science major while I
What
was
year was
still
that?
computer science. That year would have been about 1960. I guess I'm going to say I was started in 1969 at NC State.
Okay.
I was still in the United States Navy at the time in a
Okay.
Sir
Thank you
Canada
for your
program.
service.
So you're welcome. And I was in a program that was designed to train naval officers in science, so they would be scientists, have scientific background. But I decided to get out of the Navy, and when I did, I was still at NC State, North Carolina, and I had taken my first economics class, and I really liked the professor, which is, I think, common that people get drawn in sometimes to a field of study because they encounter a really good teacher. And
Hmm.
that's what happened to me. But I still didn't intend to become an economist. I still intended to become a lawyer, but I never did, even though I have enrolled 3 times in law school, been accepted in 3 different law schools, and never attended the first day. But that's
Yeah,
a different story. So I kind
I
of
get it.
stumbled into economics to sum that question up.
Okay. So is that, I wanted to ask about the book, but maybe I'm transitioning too fast here.
No, well, whatever you like.
So let me see if I can get the year. I'm not trying to date you or anything. So I'll say you were a phenom, and you were in college in 1969 to kind of, put the timeline back.
Yeah, well, I'm actually
So
older
so
than that because I had already been in the Navy for 4 years.
okay. Oh, 1969, and then kind of fast forward. I guess the book is almost 30. What is the math there? 35 years
Not,
later.
yeah, yeah, later. 2012, I guess, is what sticks in my mind of it was published,
So
something
that's a
like.
lot of years between.
Oh yeah,
So uh, perhaps you could fill in maybe what led you to writing the book. Is that okay?
yeah, that's fine. No, absolutely. I am politically what some people would call a libertarian, though I'm not a member of the Libertarian Party. So other people call it a classical liberal because that's one of the other terms. But I've always been classical liberal or libertarian mindset in my philosophy. And so, as such, I always was quite interested in freedom, liberty, and those kinds of ideas. And at one point, I guess about now, 15 years ago, something on that order, I became kind of interested in claims that were all about, they were everywhere at that time, that capitalism was immoral, that's just, and the reason that people were saying that is because it had become pretty clear to just about anybody that was paying any attention whatsoever and writing about the idea that what people refer to as capitalism leads to the greatest material prosperity that anybody ever experiences on planet Earth.
Perhaps like a healthy
Which, well, that's part of it, but I'm just saying what people, first of all, the word capitalism is a word that is virtually unusable to communicate with people because it's kind of like the word God. If you say the word God, you don't know what the other person is thinking, okay?
right.
You might not even know what you're thinking, but you certainly don't know what anybody else that you're talking to is thinking. There's a point.
You're basically saying everybody has a different definition of their
Well, I
God.
don't know that they have a different definition, but they certainly have different ideas. And they probably, if you, I don't know if you know or familiar with Jordan Peterson's work, but Jordan Peterson's made
Yes.
this point very many times. He's been asked very many times, do you believe in God? And sometimes he's answered that question so many times, but the most cogent answer that he gives is, I don't even know what you mean by God.
Yeah, what are
How
you
can I?
asking me?
Yeah, exactly. So the word capitalism is the same. You say the word capitalism to 10 people, they hear 10 different things and have 10 different ideas, if they have any cogent ideas at all about
Hmm.
what capitalism might be and what it's not. So anyway, back in, maybe 15 years ago, something on that ilk, I became interested in the idea of what is capitalism and why are people saying it's immoral. And of course, part of the reason they were saying that is because they had lost the argument. Anybody that was anti-capitalism had already lost the argument that it didn't lead to material prosperity for people. It's obvious that it does,
Hmm.
whatever capitalism is. Okay. So I
Right.
wrote a book about it, and uh, I I had two purposes for the book. I actually took a sabbatical, which means I got a semester off of my teaching and research responsibilities, and didn't have to do that. And instead, I was working on the book, and uh, I had two explicit purposes with to write the book, and one was to make a clear statement about what capitalism is and what it isn't, and the second was to make a convincing argument that not only is capitalism a moral system of political economy, it's
Hmm.
the only possible system that could be. Those were the
So
two
what? So
objectives of
what?
writing the
What
book.
would you say to the people that? Because I agree with you. I mean, but
Sure.
typically when people think about free market or capitalism, they're thinking the small business, the mom and pop that have freedom to operate their small business. But the people that seem to speak against it bring up the cases like Amazon and Google, and where you kind of almost have like these antitrust or like monopolies. So what do you say to those people that have that kind of argument?
Well, that's it's just a bogus argument. First of all, none of the companies you mentioned are anything like a monopolist. Certainly not Amazon. Amazon doesn't even make anything; they sell stuff.
Hmm.
Amazon's a marketplace, so that's just a mistaken idea. But rather than go down that rabbit hole, I would tell people that they really don't understand. People who say, well, what do you say about it? What they think capitalism is? Actually, in my book, Justin, I point out that what we do in the United States should not properly be called capitalism, even though a lot of people think the United States is the poster child for capitalism. No,
Hmm.
what the United States is the poster child for is what I decided to call democratic cronyism.
Okay.
I
Can
don't
you
like,
expand on that?
yeah, it's democratic because we get to vote in the United States. It's cronyism because it just is cronyism. People butter each other's bread all the time.
Yeah.
Government is used for the benefit of special interest groups and is paid for by people who are paying so little for it individually that the costs of those special interests is spread across so many people in so many different ways that they uh, don't really mind that much, to be frank with you. Somebody
Hmm.
came and stole half your bank account, you'd be upset, right? You'd probably try to do something about it. What if they stole 10 cents?
Yeah.
You
It
kind of
doesn't seem significant. It's like a slippery slope.
and you kind of don't see what you could do anyway. So,
Hmm.
and you'd probably say,
Is it
well,
worth the effort for 10
yeah,
cents?
I don't like the fact that somebody stole 10 cents out of my bank account, but man, I don't have time to mess with that.
Right. That makes sense.
You no doubt haven't had an opportunity to read the little book. It doesn't take very long to read. Actually, it takes you probably read it in about 3 hours. It's not real. It's only got 8 chapters, and it's written in such a way that I think people can read it pretty easily. Uh, the argument is really simply this. I'm going to sum it up real quick for you because I can. It's kind of the elevator presentation. And what's this book all about? Here's
Hmm.
what it is. Capitalism has three major pillars and its foundations, whatever you'd like to call them. The first is private property. The
Hmm.
second is voluntary exchange. Voluntary exchange.
Hmm.
Third is freedom. And the fourth is just, as in justice, just law. Okay? If you have a
Okay.
political economy that has those four pillars on which it is based and operates, you have capitalism.
Okay.
Decided to define it that way. You could ask 100 people how they would like to define capitalism, and they could be people that have studied it and have a good reason to know something about capitalism, and you're probably going to get about 100 different variations of definition. But the way I look at it, Justin, I'm using the word capitalism. What do I mean by the word capitalism? I mean that you have private property, and most property is private, not otherwise. It's private. You have private property, one. Two, exchange between individuals is voluntary. There is no coercion. You cannot coerce people to do this, that, or the other thing, which bleeds over immediately into freedom. That is, that people are in fact free to do what they want, say what they want, be what they want, so long as what? So long as they obey what I call in the book the moral imperative. It's not a moral imperative. It is the moral imperative. And the moral imperative is real easy. Do not compel another unjustly. That's it. You can say it in this: do not compel another unjustly. Okay, so
Okay.
that's what I mean by morality. That's all I
Mm-hmm.
mean, morality. All right, so you have to define terms, and those are my terms. You don't have to say, well, I agree with what you're saying. We're just saying, here's what the words mean when I use them. So when I use the word capitalism, I mean a system of political economy that is based on private property, voluntary exchange, freedom, and just law. Other people call what I call that natural law. Okay, and that's fine by me. Natural law is law that everybody knows without being taught it and agrees that it is correct law.
Mm-hmm.
Natural
Okay.
law is very limited, actually.
So I just want to make sure we're right. I want to make sure we're on the same page. I agree with you. It's not that, but do you mind if I play devil's advocate for a
No,
second?
absolutely. That's fine.
So one of the failures you talked about was freedom.
Mhm.
So if I'm playing devil's advocate, I could say, well, David, I don't have the freedom. When I want to choose this certain good or service, there is only one option. How is that? And if there was another option that tried to raise up or be brought up or whatever, this bigger option would just swallow them up. So how do you?
Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, I was worried you're going to ask that. but let me just kind
Well,
of.
see, it's actually an important question, Justin, because
No, it is. It's true.
there,
Yeah,
there
but
aren't
let
any
me try.
there aren't any goods like that. It's the whole
Well, one
point.
of the thing when you talked about Amazon, immediately I thought about because you said they don't really like sell anything, and I,
I say they do that. That's all they do is they sell things. It's
sorry,
a marketplace. That's
they have a
all it is.
marketplace. But one
They
of the
don't
things
produce.
that I was very surprised about was, have you ever heard of AWS, which stands for Amazon Web Services?
No, no, I haven't actually, but it doesn't
Okay.
surprise me they have
So
some.
so really this day and age, it seems like the modern day factory isn't brick and mortar any, it's not, those are still made if you want to make your widget, and more and more is done overseas, but it seems like the modern day factory is almost like, an intellectual property in the cloud. When people are developing these new things like artificial intelligence and everything, it's on the cloud, if you will, like on some sort of database or some sort of server sitting in some remote area where the real estate's cheap. And from what I understand, I don't have all the stats in front of me, but AWS, which is Amazon Web Services,
Mhm.
almost has a monopoly on that. And of course,
What do they do? You're talking about cloud services?
so basically, Amazon Web Services almost has a monopoly on all server, and of course, there's other people in
Oh,
the
I think,
market space. So,
actually, Justin, I think that's just mistaken.
yeah,
I think that there's all kinds of competition for cloud servers.
no, there is,
So
but the
I'm not.
majority is actually housed. So any of the ones that you see are kind of like typically a skin, or like like they Amazon allows, there is obviously Google is trying to, Apple, Microsoft, but if you look at the majority is Amazon. So the actual server where the information is held, which you could argue, they don't own that intellectual property, the person that put the property, but if that intellectual property is physically on something that Amazon owns, if a lot of people, like, the doomsday people would say, if everything goes to kaput, Amazon, all that, they have all that intellectual property. So anyway, I guess that's what, but I know a lot of, these other companies are trying to build these data centers rapidly where Amazon isn't involved.
As far as I know, that's just not true. Okay.
Right.
But I don't want to debate about it because I don't really have any basis for knowing one way or the other because I've never explored it. But so far as I know, there's all kinds of server space out there. Google operates
Yeah,
some
maybe
of it.
that was a bad
Microsoft
example.
operates. I mean,
Maybe that's a bad example. But let's say you wanted to start a company and produce a cell phone.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that would be pretty difficult to go up against Apple or Google, which has the software behind all the Android phones. So really, there's
just all kinds of cell phones available, and they're produced by different companies. They're produced all over the world. I mean, I don't think that's a good example of somebody having, quote, a monopoly either.
Yeah. Well, there's really two.
There's only two. What?
There's two. There's Apple and Android, which is Google. So if you wanted to make a cell, I mean, you could
systems.
Correct.
So, well, those are very common, but they're not the only ones. Mm-hmm. They're very, but they're not the only ones.
I'm giving bad examples, but you have to know what I'm talking. I mean, you don't feel that there's any companies out there that have any kind of monopoly or any kind of antitrust.
I actually don't think there are the only monopolies that exist are government monopolies, and that you can't really have a monopoly without government enforcing it. Turns out you really can't. You know who the two biggest the two biggest operations that come closest to being monopoly in the United States are? The Democrat Party and the Republican Party.
Yeah, there you go.
They come as close as you can get to the notion of what most people have as a monopoly, the notion of a single seller of something.
Yeah.
Okay. See if you can
Let me try one more time. Let me try one more example. How about Google? Like, if you're going to search, you're going to Google it, right?
Well, the truth is there are literally tens of alternative search engines, tens of them.
Yeah.
I can name 3 of them pretty quickly, just sitting right here, right? Yeah. I mean, you got Google, you got DuckDuckGo.
Okay, I guess I'm the worst devil's advocate in the world because, like I said, I agree with you. But when I have these discussions,
Justin, don't feel. These are very common beliefs that people have. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have them because they really are to be forgiven because they've never had an opportunity, for whatever reason, to study economics.
Right.
Okay. Most people have not studied economics. I mean, not just, well, they did a little. No, I mean, at all.
Right.
Strangely enough, even though economics and finance affect them more than anything else in their life.
Right. Yep.
They've never studied it. They don't know anything about it. But they're to be forgiven because how could they? Nobody taught you any economics in grade school, that's for sure. Did you encounter any economics in high school? Maybe, but
not
if
in
you
high
did.
School. For me, it was college. The first time I heard.
Yeah.
I heard them in college. I didn't hear anything in high school.
No, neither did I. Of course, I'm probably a lot older than you, but it goes way back. In the state of Virginia, where I live, there's supposedly a law that every high school has to give students have a class in finance. Well, that's a joke. That's an absolute joke. It doesn't happen. They call it finance, but they don't. They're talking about here's what a bank account is. That's not finance.
Right.
Here's how you balance your checkbook. That's not finance. That's some.
So what about? So obviously you can't teach a whole lecture, can't teach everybody economics in 5 minutes. But for the non-academics, is there any kind of highlights that you would like to kind of say, like, hey, you're not going to understand everything right now, but you know what? For the people,
economic?
I guess you kind of did another elevator pitch, but did you have something about that can kind of help the general public for the non-academics out there?
Gosh.
That's a tough one, huh?
No, it's not tough. I mean, I can give you in just a couple of minutes what I call the fundamental hypothesis of economics, the
Yeah.
FHE, fundamental hypothesis of economics, and all the rest of economics is built on this starting point. And if this starting
Okay.
point turns out to be true, it has great implications. It turns out to have inferences that you can make. It leads to places that you wouldn't expect it to lead to. And it is the beginning point. It's kind of like a pyramid resting on one point, that the wide part of the pyramid is at the top and the point's at the bottom. This is the fundamental hypothesis of economics. You ready? I'm going to say it right
I'm
now.
ready. I'm ready.
People choose those actions they believe will yield for themselves their largest net value. Okay. You have to unpack that for it to be meaningful. So I'll do that
Hmm.
real quickly. People
Okay.
choose, individuals choose, groups don't choose, organizations don't choose, America doesn't choose, individuals choose. So people choose. And what is it they choose? Well, if you don't act, you haven't really made a choice, have you? They make choices. Then they act. And until they act, it really isn't a choice. You walk into McDonald's and you're thinking, I'm going to get a Big Mac, and then instead you get the chicken fingers or whatever. Guess
Hmm.
what? When you were thinking about getting the Big Mac, you were thinking about it, but you hadn't been choosing yet, had you? No, because it's an action. Okay, so I'm unpacking that. People choose those actions they believe. Why they believe? Well, they can be wrong, first of all.
Right.
Sometimes, do you ever have buyer regret?
Yes.
Everybody
Absolutely.
has. Everybody's had buyer regret. You thought, yeah, I bought this thing, cost $100. I got home down. What did I lose my mind?
I do that with clothes.
Clothes all the time, right? So people
Yeah.
choose those actions they believe. At the time they have to choose, they believe. What is it they believe? They believe that this action will yield for who? Themselves, not their mom, not their dad, not their cousin, not China, not who? Themselves, their
Hmm.
largest net value.
Net
Now,
value. I think
net
that's important.
value
Net
is
value.
net value is the toughest one to unpack. Fortunately, I'm good at it, and I can unpack it in just a few minutes. Every time you make a choice, every single time you make a choice, I make it. Anybody makes a choice. Remember, it's just individuals that do that. By the way, time you make a choice, you gain some value and you lose some value.
Okay.
The value you gain,
That's a little confusing.
yeah, well, it will be for a minute, but it'll be crystal
Yeah.
clear in just a
Okay.
second.
Okay.
We call the value you receive, we have a technical term for that in economics, it's called a benefit. The value that you forego is called a cost. It has a technical
Right.
term.
Okay. Okay.
And now let's run that definition of the FHE by again. People choose those actions. They will believe will yield themselves their largest net value. Or you could now
Net
say, since
value.
I've defined it, net benefit. Benefit
Okay.
is value received, cost is value foregone. Look here, you decide to buy that shirt, right?
Hmm.
What did
It
you
cost me
forego?
something. That
You
cost me
paid
some
you
currency,
paid some
some
dollars for it. You could have bought instead those pants.
right.
You go value every time you choose and you gain value. Now let's run it by one more time. The FHE. It's so important to understand it. If you don't understand it, you couldn't understand anything about economics. And if you don't think it's true, then we might as well put away the books, put away the pencils, and forget about economics, because if it's false, there's nothing else in economics that could be true. Okay, so here it is one last time, or unless you want to say it again. People choose those actions they believe will yield themselves their largest net. What a,
People choose their or make the actions on what they believe will be their largest
they choose actions they believe will give themselves
believe
their
give
largest
themselves the
their
largest
largest.
net value or net.
Yeah, you could say benefit too, once you understand the definition of benefit. Now, the one word we need to define that we hadn't defined yet, so I'm going to define it because I use it all the time, and it's just super important. It's the word value. Other
Hmm.
economists like to use the word utility. I don't use the word utility because it's a technical term that confuses people. But
Hmm.
everybody knows what value is, don't they?
Hmm.
You
I
value
think.
things. Well, I'm going to tell you exactly what it is, and I think you'll agree with me.
Hmm.
You value things, I value things, Harry values things, Harriet values things. What is value? Psychic satisfaction is what it is. It occurs. Where does value live? I tell my students this every day. Where does value live, Justin? In
In
your
the
mind.
mind? In
That's
the
it.
mind. Yeah.
Things do not have a value.
It's just what we think, what we assign value to them in our minds.
So you attribute to something or some idea, some good, some service, some idea, even some person, you attribute
Mm-hmm.
to them value, which means what? In your mind, you get psychic satisfaction. It's not in my mind. You guess what? Value is therefore entirely, absolutely, and utterly subjective. And there are a lot of aphorisms that humans use to express that idea. And everybody knows it and everybody agrees with it. One
Mm-hmm.
man's food is another man's poison.
Right.
One
Man,
man
so
gathers what another man loses. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. All of these
right.
expressions attest to the idea that value is absolutely and utterly psychological and subjective.
So I've never even thought about the idea of economics kind of spilling into the concept of psychology. That's so interesting. For some reason, when I think of economics, I think of black and white,
Of
binary,
course.
A,
Of
B.
course.
But what you're
Yeah.
basically saying, it's almost like psychology.
Well, it is, we take as given, economists do. Didn't always used to be this way, Justin. Back to the father of economics, as he's called, Adam Smith, and one of his contemporaries, Karl Marx, they talked about value, and both of them believed in what's called the labor theory of value. They believed that, first of all, they believed that things have value, and that the reason they have value is because of the labor content that they embodied. They were
Okay.
wrong.
Almost like in physics, like the definition of work. It's almost like it's not
Well,
what's in the mind. It's how much like work or labor it takes to produce that thing or that item or
something
whatever it
like
is.
that. Yeah, but just, this is a complicated thought for a while, but once you get inside it, you can't get outside it again.
Yeah.
Name something you think has value, some good.
Well, I mean, right away I think my children, but that's not something that's for sale.
It
So
doesn't have to be. So
my
you
my
think your children,
vehicle, my
your,
vehicle, my
your,
truck.
yeah, yeah. We could go to people here in a minute, but actually that's more complicated. But let's say your truck, all right? How much value does your truck have? And
$100,000.
you're tempted to think in terms of dollars, since that's what we deal in all the time, but dollars
Right.
have nothing whatsoever to do with value, as it turns out. They
Mm-hmm.
have to do with what we call medium of exchange. But, I might not value your truck at all.
Right.
In fact, if you gave it to me, the first thing I might do is sell it.
Right.
All right. So what?
Yes.
So that I could do what? So that I could get something that I did value.
But you do value.
You know,
That is so interesting.
it's fascinating concept, and once you understand it and get it, then you can't really ever lose it, and you can't get outside it. So the fundamental, you asked me, what could I relate to the public that is something about economics? And it occurred to me, well, I'm going to relate the starting point. If you don't start in the right place, sociology is also a social science. Psychology is a social science that you mentioned. Political science is a social science. They don't start there. None of them start where economics begins. I don't even know if they have a fundamental hypothesis, but economics does. And this is it. People choose those actions they believe will yield themselves their largest net benefit.
Net
That's
benefit.
one way to say it. There's a lot of different ways to say it, but that's the one I like.
Yeah. That
Okay,
makes a
so
lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that.
there's an economics lesson. So what does that have
Yep.
to do with morality and capitalism? Well, you can't get in a society, you cannot generate greater value for more people than to do what? Use capitalism as the basis of your political economy, where what does capitalism mean? It means this: private property, voluntary exchange, freedom, personal freedom, and I'll just say it the way most, just law. What do I mean just? It is just law. It's natural law. It is
Can you kind of
just,
touch on that fourth one a little more?
but it's the most challenging one.
Okay.
There are two kinds of law. You can read all about this in my little book, and I hope people will do that.
I hope so too.
I hope they will do that. The name of the book is Morality and Capitalism, a dialogue on freedom. It's available on Amazon in 3 different formats. It's easy to come by. Just
I'm
type
gonna
in
when I publish this podcast, I'll make sure to put a. Do you want me to do the Amazon link for it, or okay?
that, whatever. All this is, it's a little easier to think about when you can read it and think about a little bit. What is just law? Natural law are laws that everybody knows that they know, and they know that they agree with them. And they don't actually, once people attain a certain age and maturity in life, you don't even have to tell them what natural law is. They just know. It's the
Yeah.
truth. You know, you know. Okay.
Okay.
So I set out when I wrote this book to see if I could articulate what that truth is in a way that everybody could understand it and it wasn't confusing at all. And I think I achieved that, but then I could be wrong. Right. If there's anything I know for sure, it's that I can be wrong. Okay. But so law comes in 2 flavors, natural law and positive law. In this use of the word positive, it's not the opposite of the word negative. It comes from the same root. The etymology of the word is to posit. So positive laws are just laws that somebody posited. Well, here's the law. It has nothing to do with, let me give you an example of a positive law. You go on green, you stop on red. Okay, there's nothing natural
Somebody's
about that.
yes,
That's just, we just posited that. We said, here's what the law is going to be. Okay.
yes,
Or you can't park here. No parking. Right. That's a positive law. There's nothing natural or unnatural about it. It's positive. If you get the notion of positive law, then most laws are in fact positive laws. Somebody just posited the thing.
yeah. I mean, there's kind of a natural thing like, hey, there's some sort of dilemma or potential conflict here, so we need to come up with this. You're basically saying positive law
See,
is
here's another feature. See, most positive law is absolutely hideous and self-serving to somebody. Okay,
uh
positive laws are abhorrent for the most part. There's one category, and you just mentioned them. Good on you. That are we want some positive laws because they
hmm
are we want to coordinate with each other, but nobody cares what the law actually is. Do you care? If
hmm
somebody had said, "Well, we're going to go on red and stop on green," would you have cared?
No,
No, nobody
it's just we
cares.
need to have
They just
something so
want
we're all on
there
the
to be
same page.
some law.
hmm
Would you care? Would you care if the drinking age in the United States was 21 or 21 and a half?
I wouldn't care.
You wouldn't bloody well care, but you wanted to be something.
Yeah, I think it would be smart. That's a good idea to have some law like that. Yeah.
Nobody really cares exactly what it is. But here, now let me give you, I'm going to give you the fundamental natural law. And it's what
hmm
I gave it a name in the book. It's called the moral imperative. Not a moral imperative, but the moral.
hmm
And what does it say? It says, do not compel another unjustly. Now, let's unpack that a little bit. Compel. What does it mean to compel someone? It's very
Kind of
straightforward.
motivate them or push them
No,
or get
no,
somebody
no.
to do something.
That's persuasion.
Okay. Compel.
I'm going to tell you what compel is. By my definition, I'm not trying to say you have to believe this.
Yeah, yeah.
No, this is just definitional. We're just
hmm
defining terms. Compulsion is this: force, threat of force, or fraud. That's it.
Okay.
You
So it's
use
kind of a
force,
negative way to motivate for somebody to do something.
or it's compulsion. It isn't motivation. You're forcing them. Or if
Okay.
you're threatening force, that's also compulsion.
I
And
see.
if you lie to them to deceive them intentionally to get them to do something, that's fraud. And you
So how
do it
about
with
this? It's
intention
forcing somebody to do something
or
in a bad
threatening to
way.
force them if they don't,
Threatening. Okay. Okay.
or
I think I have it.
deceiving them so that they will do it. You see, you deceive them
Yes. Okay.
intentionally. That's compulsion too. Okay, so
Okay.
now let's be specific about the most common forms of compulsion. Well, let's
hmm
see. I think they're all in the Ten Commandments. You murder somebody, you kill, that's kill. That's forcing somebody to relinquish their life.
Yeah.
That's pretty forceful, right?
Yes.
You you steal from them. That's force, isn't it? You're
Yes.
forcing them to give them your stuff,
hmm
their stuff rather. If you steal from someone, you're forcing that person to give you their stuff. It's force.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got murder and theft. And then, of course, there's the granddaddy of them all, rape, right?
Mm-hmm.
But nobody disagrees about this, by the way, Justin. Everybody, my claim in the book is that all people in all times, in all places, that's a lot of territory, right?
Mm-hmm.
All people, all spaces, all time agree that compelling another person is wrong human behavior. They agree. That doesn't mean they don't do it. That means they know it's wrong.
Right.
Would you agree? Just
Yeah.
as I'm
I mean,
interested to know if you agree.
I think people would try to argue against it, but if you actually started asking them some questions and said, "Well, would this be okay with you?" they would say no.
Well,
So
no.
you do agree. Yeah.
You ask them right away, is it okay if I kill you right now?
No,
I
of
have
course not.
my 9 millimeter right. Is it okay if I shoot you right now?
Yeah.
They say, no, that's
But
not okay.
there's
Is
that.
it okay if I steal your truck? Justin, can I steal your truck? Is that
No.
good? Is that right human behavior or is that wrong human behavior? Well, you'd say, no, it's wrong.
But it depends if you twist it and you say, is it okay if you and I steal this person's truck because we need it to justify or something? That might be but
Well,
anything to
that doesn't
them is, of
change any.
course,
That
no.
doesn't. That
Right. I got you. Yeah.
in my little book, also I mentioned the question that Professor De La Paz asked of Wyo in the novel by Robert Heinlein, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Under what conditions is it right for two people to do something that everybody agrees it's wrong for either of those persons to do to another? Under what conditions? And the simple, straightforward answer is there are no such conditions.
I got it. Okay.
Which
Man,
is rather.
you're making me use my brain here. My
Yeah,
brain
I know.
is
Well, that's what it's. So I don't apologize.
No, don't apologize. It's great. Yeah, it's great. Thank you for doing. Okay.
No,
So,
so that's
yeah.
rather damning for the notion of government, isn't it?
Yeah. Because I guess they
Because
compel all the time.
government is all about compelling people,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
I agree with that.
Well, so there you have it. So we've gone far afield here, but it's kind of entertaining.
So I guess we can kind of transition into the FairTax. Do you feel that our and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think there's that year 1913, and we lost a lot of our liberties after that.
1913, Justin, 1913 is absolutely, bar none, the worst year of human history, and certainly United States history, rather.
Wow, I've never heard it say that.
1913 is the worst year in American history, bar none. Why? We got two things, both of which are evil, wrong, violate the moral imperative, and are not part of what I call capitalism. The first is the income tax. The second was the Federal Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those laws became law in 1913. The income tax, which was unconstitutional, became constitutional through the 16th Amendment, and the creation of the Federal Reserve to create money was made into law. All that in the same year. Go ahead, I interrupted.
No, you didn't interrupt me at all, do you? I just, I'll just tell you, I'm almost 50. I'm 47, so I wasn't. But the thing that surprises me so much is that why, and maybe it's just because I'm older and I'm more aware, but why are we only really talking about this now? I mean, back in the 80s, I was only 10 years old, and it seems like our country was potentially on a right path with Reagan and kind of trying to go some, different directions. Why wasn't this stuff discussed in the 80s? Why? I mean, because at that time, I look at it as there might actually be some people that were still alive, because right now there's nobody alive that was, in 1913, but why wasn't this more of an issue in the 80s? Or I'm not trying to say you would know that. Yeah.
I can't say that I know. Of course, I was alive in the 1980 Fog and the Mirror Just Fine and was much younger, but in the 1980s, I certainly remember 1980s reasonably well. First of all, remember, most people, and by most, I mean a huge, huge majority of people, I can't put a number to it, but it's a really large super majority of people, know absolutely nothing about economics.
Mm-hmm.
They're to be forgiven. They're not stupid people, they're ignorant people.
Mm-hmm.
They've never had an opportunity to learn anything about economics.
So maybe it just wasn't really affecting them as much. Maybe we're kind of coming more to a tipping point, and things are really starting to,
Well,
if
there
they
was a
say
lot
the poop
going
hitting the fan.
And
But
there was a lot going on in the 90s. I mean, all this happened. I shouldn't put it that way. A lot has happened, actually, but a very, very important thing that's happened since the 1980s, that here we are in the 80s, is we have the internet, we have computers,
right.
we have cell phones. There's almost nothing that happens on planet Earth that you don't hear something about if it's in any way, shape, or form likely to be a political issue
Mm-hmm.
these days. I mean, good Lord. We're bombarded 24/7, 365 with information, some of it correct, some of it incorrect. We're bombarded with political propositions, some of it good, some of it bad. It's relentless. That wasn't going on in the 1980s.
Right. So you're kind of saying maybe some of this people are more becoming aware because of the share of information. And back when, I think HR25 is Senator Lindor. He was an author. And were you involved at because actually
Yeah.
to be upfront with you, so I have a lot of discussions with Bill, how I was introduced to you, and then Marty and Frank, and all of them were around 2005. You said 2000, so to me you're the grandfather.
Oh,
You
no,
know,
no, no. I may have misspoken, or maybe I just wasn't clear. No, I first became interested and even aware of the fair tax in 2000.
okay, so about the same time as Frank and Marty,
Yeah, it's
and I
about
think,
the same
yeah,
time. I mean,
okay,
I don't have as good a memory these days as I used to have, Justin, but the fair tax has not been around much longer than
right,
I can't remember
yeah, I
what
could look,
year. I can't
I'll look it
remember.
up.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to come by the information, which is part of the reason I don't remember. It's because it's pretty easy to come by if you want it. When the first HR25 was introduced into Congress, I can't. It's like 2000. I don't know. It might have been 2000. I'm not sure. I'd have
Yeah,
to look.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
But I didn't know anything about it until about 2004, something like that, maybe. Let me see what my AI says.
Yeah. Actually, could we talk about AI a little? Do you use
Sure.
ChatGPT or Grok or the
I've
Microsoft one or
used ChatGPT for about a year, and just a few days ago, my department chair asked me if I would switch over to Gemini, Google's Gemini, to give it a test drive. And so I dropped my subscription to ChatGPT and switched to Gemini.
so John Lindor introduced it to the 106th Congress in July 1999.
July
Oh,
14, 99. That's what I'm seeing too.
yeah.
Yeah. He was a representative from Georgia.
So a few months ago, we were trying to kind of get the word out, and we ended up having a Twitter Spaces that John Lindor was actually on.
Hmm.
The problem is, anytime we do these great things or whatever, they don't. There's not a lot of coverage or not a lot of people listen to it. But I'm hoping with the podcast, since it's something that people can listen to over and over again, that it's something that
Well, I
so
would like to rejoin you and tell you a couple of thoughts down your list here that I think are important.
one and we're back. So I think we established that it was introduced in 1999. So I guess if somebody says that they were familiar with the fair tax before that, we know that they're not telling the truth.
Well, they might have been because there had been a lot of research already done.
Yeah.
Some folks that had begun talking about it, and research had, I think the Fair Tax Organization had been formed, but the actual bill hadn't been written yet. And after they had done a considerable amount of research and they had a committee and so forth that had some economists and some other folks on it to design the bill. Then when they finally finished all that, then it was introduced in 1999. But I didn't
Yeah.
become aware of it really until probably about 2004. And then I believe
Mm-hmm.
it was in 2005 that um, I wrote a letter, drafted a letter, and got about 80 other economists to sign it, and we sent it off to the president and the Congress and the tax commission and all that.
Yeah, I don't want to talk negative about the fair tax, but I will, maybe it can motivate somebody to to see that it does have some longevity, and people that have been involved in the very beginning are still involved. But when I talked to Marty and Frank, the way they got into it was in California, and they had a weekly conference call. I think they said 8 or a dozen of them, something like that. And they say,
Mm-hmm.
sadly, they're the only two that are alive now.
Yeah,
So,
well, that does tend. Bill Bill Rollison was making that observation the last time I talked to him, that a lot of
yeah,
folks that are getting a little old, a little long in the tooth, including me.
yeah. But I mean, it's encouraging, because you're the movement, or the grassroots journey needs people like you. So I'm really thankful that you haven't given up. And
Well,
I
I
know
didn't
I've,
give up. Yeah, that was one of your questions that you wanted to talk about, and I'll jump to that. Maybe
yeah,
I'll
of
go
course.
somewhere else, but that's fine. Why do people ask me all the time? I'm a professional economist, and I have some contacts and so forth. I interact with other economists all the time, and people ask me, well, why? They say, David, this will never happen, don't you? And why are you wasting your time with this? And so
Can I
that
say
was
what I
one.
say to that?
Yeah. What do you?
I say not with that attitude. That's what I'd say. But
What I say is, believe it or not, I say, I agree with you. I
hmm.
agree with you. And even if it never happens, I'm still going to support it because it's the right thing to do.
Ooh, I like that answer.
It's that simple.
I
I'm
like
going to
that. It's
support
conviction.
it. I'm going to tell people about it, even though I agree with you that it will probably never happen. Now,
Yeah, that's the.
I became very excited about the prospects of it actually finally at least getting a vote from Congress when Trump was elected the second time.
Hmm.
Because he has made remarks about he knows that the income tax is a bad thing. He had made, he made remarks during the campaign and made promises indeed. He said, well, we're going to exempt Social Security payments from the income tax. We're going to exempt overtime pay from the income tax. We're going to exempt tips from, right? Well, then in the big, beautiful bill, he tried to get those things done. And what happens? Well, the same thing that always happens in Congress, you get a little bit and you don't get it all.
Hmm.
Okay, and that's exactly what happens. The whole
Right.
political process is, in the real world, the sausage machine, as they call it, is difficult to navigate. And Trump's done a better job this time round than he did the first time round for the most part. But still, I was very excited right after the election that we might actually, if we could get Trump and Speaker Johnson behind it, that it might actually get out of the Ways and Means Committee to the floor of the House and be debated and be voted on.
Hmm.
That would be amazing if even that happened. I think it would be very difficult. It has not gotten out of the Ways and Means Committee for 25 years.
Right.
And there's a good reason it hasn't. The reason why is because the congressmen know that they would be facing a real serious problem if it ever does, because they're going to
Right.
have to vote. And I have never once explained the fair tax to one, even not once in my life have I explained the fair tax to somebody. And they didn't say, that's not a bad idea.
Wow. I wish more of the people that I spoke to, and I don't know if I say it wrong or what, but I get a lot of
Well,
opposition.
I don't know what you say, but there are people that have talking points and they're opposed to it. But I don't know. I've been around this a long time, Justin. I know I'm able to explain to them that either no, that's not what the fair tax does, or yes, it does that, but have you thought of this? And when I say I haven't talked to everybody. There are people, they're Democrats, they're liberals, they're progressives who are deadly opposed to the fair tax because they are fearful that that will restrict government. And it will. It will. Why? Well, it may or may not be the case that as much tax revenue could be raised with the fair tax as with the income tax because people have some choices in it with the fair tax,
Hmm.
don't they?
Yes.
You know, I can imagine this wouldn't be me, but I can imagine a household that said, well, you know what? We're not going to pay any tax at all because we're not going to buy new stuff.
Or do barter or something like that.
No, they're not barter. Barter is really hard. People aren't going to barter, for goodness sakes. Do you realize how long it takes to barter for stuff? You have to find somebody who's got what you want and you want what they've got. That's hard. That's why we
Right.
use money. That's the very reason we use money.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most important so that we don't have to barter. No, but they can buy used stuff. Then they get
Mm-hmm.
they would get the prebate to cover stuff like food and stuff you buy at the grocery store. But suppose
Well,
somebody,
that's an interesting point. Why do you? I mean, don't you think? I mean, not that this, like you said, you support it because it's the right thing. But if it did pass, you don't think that that would? I guess what you're saying, it would be more going after used goods. But
well,
you don't
some
think it would
people
support
would.
more people starting to do a little bit more barter because they realize they can kind of avoid paying taxes that way?
No, there's no reason to use barter. You don't
Okay,
have to use barter to avoid paying the fair tax. You just buy
used
stuff
by used.
secondhand. That's all.
Right.
You go buy, instead of going to Walmart to buy clothes, you go to the thrift store.
Yeah.
It's not that you
Except for some,
barter.
right now our country doesn't really do that. I mean,
No,
yeah, they do a little, but
well,
I mean, obviously
to be honest with you, Justin, I wouldn't expect very many people to do that. I would only
right.
expect people who really have quite low incomes to do
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying it the fair tax is not perfect. It is not a
Right.
perfect system. It's
Right.
just way better than the income tax. That's all. It's
Yeah.
not perfect. There is no perfect when it comes to taxation. There's only one form of taxation that I would argue is moral, that should be the case, but it's not going to be. And that would be what? The tax would be paid voluntarily.
Yeah.
Think
You don't
about
have to
that for a
be
minute.
coerced to.
Voluntarily. I'm going to send the government some money
Hmm.
voluntarily. I don't have to, but I'm going to. Why? Because there are some things I want government to do. That's why I want government. I want the federal government to have an effective military, don't you?
Yes.
Well, I should expect to pay for that, shouldn't I?
Yes.
Well, of course I should. And I would send some money. Now,
Yeah.
my proposition that
Okay.
all taxation that is not voluntary is theft.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
agree with that.
outright theft. Okay,
Right.
so it's immoral because we already established, in my world at least, that stealing stuff is wrong behavior for humans.
Right. That is one of my arguments when I talk to people about the fair tax. They say, no, it's not perfect. However, it's the most or the best option right now.
Well,
It definitely, yeah.
one of the things you could tell people, Justin, when you talk to people about the fair tax, is that a huge majority of professional economists agree that a taxing consumption instead of income is a better idea.
Hmm.
They agree with that theoretically, in theory. But it's also true that a majority of economists say, well, it just can't ever happen because of politics. Okay. So there's so many things to talk about in a conversation like this, but the way to go with people if you're trying to persuade them to support the fair tax is to just use the argument that it is way better than the income tax
Right.
for a whole host of reasons, many of which I'm sure you already know.
Yeah. I did write out a little roadmap, if you will, with dates.
Sure.
And I think I think it's still because I have on here, and this is all projection. There's no basis and truth in any of this, but it's just something that could happen. So I have step 4 as the president signing in fall of 2026. So, if we got the votes in, early next year of 218, after coming out of the Ways and Means Committee. So, anyway, in my mind, it's still possible. And because I
Well,
felt
it
like
is.
people need.
Here's my proposition, and
Hmm.
it's pretty pessimistic, but I think it's very realistic.
Hmm.
One of the things that you had put on your list that you wanted to talk about is why hasn't it happened? Why hasn't HR25 even, it certainly hasn't been passed. It's never even been voted on. Why not? Well, because to get anything done, absolutely anything done in the world of politics, it requires leadership, and it requires leadership from the top,
Hmm.
from the very top. You just don't get anything done, period, if you don't have the support of the Speaker of the House, do you? It's not going to happen because the Speaker of the House controls the agenda of the House,
Mm-hmm.
period. The Speaker of the House is a very powerful role. Newt Gingrich didn't want to be president. He wanted to be Speaker of the House, and he was. And he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be Speaker of the House because he realized that being president even has limitations that he didn't think he wanted to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, think about the limitations that Trump faced during the first term. Well, they basically shut him down, did they not?
I agree.
Now think of what's going to happen if the Republicans don't hold the House in 2026.
Yeah,
They're
he'll
going to
be
do it
shut down
again.
again. Right.
They're going to do it again. He will be the lamest lame duck president that was ever lame if the
Yeah.
House goes over to the Democrats in 2026.
I don't know if you want to go this direction, but I don't really know a lot about Johnson. I mean, I feel like I was excited when he was put into power, but I don't really know about his policy. It seems like he almost just kind of goes along with the flow. You know, he
No,
doesn't
not
really have
really.
any opinion.
What you might want to do is jump on your Chat GPT or your Google or whatever you
Mm-hmm.
use, whatever, you can get stuff, you get
Yeah.
access to an AI
But
for
in your
free that
mind, is
will
there any
answer.
hope for him, or is there any hope with him, or not really?
Speaker Johnson is a Christian,
Right.
just for openers,
Yeah. No, I did know that. I did know that.
okay?
But I
But
hear
he's
Trump
not,
talk about getting rid of income tax. I don't really hear any quotes from Johnson about that kind of stuff.
well, I don't know very much about Johnson either, other than that I know that he is a man with genuine values. I know that much. But he also is a man that knows that if you're going to get things done, you have to play by whatever the game's rules are.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get anything done in the political world by trying to buck the rules. Well, right now, the
Right.
rules are what they are. And the
Yeah.
House has rules, and the Senate has rules, and there's practicalities of life. So I think he's about as good a speaker as we're likely to imagine.
Yeah.
We shouldn't imagine that Trump is not aware of, and that Speaker Johnson is not aware of the fair tax they are, but to the extent that they have not jumped on the bandwagon and gone riding off into the West, waving their hats and shouting fair tax, there must be a reason. Now, as it happens, I was very fortunate just a few months ago, about 3 or 4 months ago, I guess. I actually got us a meeting with my district's congressman. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'd been trying to accomplish that for 2 or 3 years. It's not easy to do. And I was able finally to get an appointment and spoke with him for about 45 minutes.
Can we talk about that? Did you bring up the fair tax at all, or?
Absolutely. That was my whole point. That was the whole
Yeah.
reason that I wanted to have an appointment with him, was to advocate for the fair tax and get his opinion and impressions. His name is Morgan Griffith in the Ninth District of Virginia. And he's a very nice man, and he's actually economically literate and understands that the fair tax would be a good thing and all that. He told me, though, that this was several months ago now, and he told me that, well, nothing's going to happen in Congress until the reconciliation tax bill is passed. The big beautiful bill, as it got called, right? So there ain't anything going to happen until that is taken care of. Well, that's taken care of now. He did
Okay.
say that he thought there might be a possibility that another tax bill could be addressed after the 26 elections, but he wasn't particularly optimistic that even if it got a vote that it could get passed. But I personally think that without leadership, nothing happens. Absolutely
Yeah.
nothing happens ever.
Sorry to ask you to repeat, but you said Morgan Griffith, Ninth District from,
Yeah.
did you say
In
Virginia?
Virginia. Yeah, sure. I live
Okay.
in Virginia.
Virginia.
I
Got it.
live in the Ninth District. I live in Abingdon, Virginia, and that's in the Ninth Congressional District of Virginia. And our congressman is Republican Morgan Griffith.
Okay.
Um,
I got it
and
here.
Morgan
Well,
Griffith,
hmm
he doesn't, he's not optimistic that the fair tax, he argues that most congressmen are afraid of the fair tax. They don't even want to talk about it.
Whether you're Democratic or Republican, they're
Yeah,
just kind of in general.
they just in
Did he
general,
touch on why and why that is?
because
Just
they're
like losing
economically
control?
illiterate.
Okay.
Most members of Congress are completely economically illiterate.
So it's just a matter of being ignorant, not of
Yeah,
malice or
yeah. And I'm not saying they're evil people. Yeah, I'm saying they're ignorant of economics,
it's just
and
something
more
they
than
don't totally understand. So they kind of hear
well,
about it and
absolutely.
it's just, yeah.
Well, Congress members of Congress say a lot of things, and most of them are absolutely ridiculous, especially when they're talking about economics.
Okay.
I mean, it's the nature of the world. It's just the
So
case.
when you brought it up to him, did he make it sound like, oh yeah, I've heard of that and
Oh yeah, no,
I'm
he knew all about the fair tax. It
okay.
wasn't I already knew that
Genuinely
he
or
yeah, no, yeah, he knows about the fair
okay.
tax. It's not, it's not, he's been in Congress now for I think over 10 years now.
Hmm.
So no, he's a smart guy. He's a smart guy, and he's um, economically. I won't say he's necessarily brilliant, but he understands enough about economics to understand that the fair tax, taxing using a sales tax to collect taxes, has a lot of benefits and it's got a lot going for it as opposed to an income tax. See, Justin, I teach a course called Public Finance, where all we do in that course is we study and think about the economics of taxation, the theoretical prospects of taxing, using an income tax, using a wealth tax, using a corporate tax, using property tax, all these kinds of things. What are the economic outcomes that we can expect from doing various kinds of taxation? And so there are a lot of things that if you understand a little bit about economics, that's why, as I mentioned to you a few minutes ago, a really large majority of professional economists will immediately agree that using a sales tax to collect federal taxes is a better idea than using an income tax
Yeah.
because it's
So
supported.
can I ask about that? How does
Sure.
that work as a professor as far as, this is a belief that you have and some might argue that it's an ideology, if you will, and you strongly agree with it, but how are you
It's not.
yeah,
It's not an ideology. I'm a scientist, Justin.
right.
I'm a lot of things, but when I talk about economics, I'm a scientist. I'm not
But
talking about political
as far
persuasion.
as yeah, I guess my question is, do you ever get checked by somebody that oversees you as far as you're talking about the fair tax or anything? Do you understand my
No,
question?
no, absolutely not. Nobody
Well,
can
that's
tell me
great news.
nobody can tell me that's what academic freedom's all about.
Yeah,
I teach what
well,
I teach. Nobody's
right.
business they can. I'm a tenured full professor at the University of Virginia's College at Wise. So I'd welcome anybody trying to tell me that they have something to say about what I teach.
Well, that's great. I mean, that is so good. I mean, because the reality is you're able to like freely speak truth. I mean, you're able
Well,
to freely
I do
give good
the
lessons.
best I can do. I do the best I can do. I do my best to try not to teach students anything that I don't think is true. Now,
Right.
I can be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying, I'm more aware of the possibilities and pitfalls of not knowing than most people. Trust me, I do. Mostly what I know is that I don't know,
Yeah.
you know,
Because I mean, I
seriously.
think some of the narrative that goes around is that the man, puts down the truth and is trying to spread some evil agenda. And for people like yourself that are actually giving good lessons out there to help people, mind expand and to grow as an individual, that you guys are put down because of these evil agendas or these evil narratives. And from what you're saying, it sounds like you're able to actually freely give, I hate to say the good news, the truth and
Well, I
actually
am. No,
without yeah, that's really
no,
great.
I'm not under any kind of pressure to
Yeah.
other than a lot of academia. You do know that 95% of academia is progressive liberals,
Hmm.
literally 95%. And so
Yeah,
there's
I
a
have a
lot of,
very I went to Oregon State and I did, but as soon as I was done, I was done. And then I went
yeah,
straight into construction. So, and I
yeah,
started, doing companies and things like that. So the world of academia just served its purpose for me and I moved on.
right, right.
Yeah,
Well,
so I don't really understand your world that well, to be candid.
Now it's filled with progressives.
Well,
So there's
I kind of had that idea. So I mean, that's what it seems like.
yeah.
You're the bright light.
Well, I'm not very bright. It's a very dim light
To me, you
that
are. Okay, just so you know, this is very encouraging for me. So to
it's
hear
it's like
something
a
positive like this.
it's like a candle in a carnival light, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It gets kind of
So what
overwhelmed. But
I hear your pessimism, and I don't think it's unfounded. I
it's
wish
not
it was.
it's I don't
Yeah.
consider it pessimism. I consider it
Mm-hmm.
realism. I'm not
Realism.
pessimistic. I'm
Right.
optimistic. I still remain optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we are at a critical junction the in the world of politics right now.
So let's talk
And
about that. So,
yeah,
if your realism does come true and the HR, like I have on my, schedule fall of 2026, the president signs this thing. Let's say none of this happens. All of our efforts are, hopefully they're not for nothing because some people will maybe see, a better path or whatnot. But how do we kind of go forward? I guess that's a broad question. But how do we
well,
go forward if there is no fair tax? Is there any other hope or, I mean, that's pretty
if you
broad, but
yeah, it's pretty broad. But first of all, in the world of politics, this is my conviction, and I do think this is correct. I might be wrong, but I think it is correct. I think, just as we already mentioned, that if the Republicans don't hold the House in 2026 after the midterm elections, if the Democrats retake the House, Trump's presidency is over.
hmm
They will immediately impeach him
hmm
again.
hmm
There will be nothing else done. The whole news cycle will, you've been through it. We've been through it already. We know what will happen. We know what they will do. They lie, they cheat, they steal, they do whatever they do.
So it's kind of like this is it. I mean, there is no fair
This
tax
is it.
2.0 or
No,
HR25 2.0
no.
or
Now,
yeah.
I also believe this, though. I also believe this, and I think I'm right. Could be wrong, might be wrong, but I think not. I don't think the Democrats will hold the presidency for 12 more years.
hmm
Just don't believe it. I don't see how. There are so many Republicans that are in good position, who are good people, and who have notoriety and who have name recognition. Let me just name a few: J.D. Vance,
hmm
Marco Rubio,
hmm
the current governor of Virginia, Youngkin, and let's not forget Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
I mean, and these are people with heft. These are not nobodies. These are not people that couldn't possibly win the presidency. No, these are people, one of them's going to be the next president after Trump, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they're going to
Yeah,
get
there's not.
reelected, and so there's a nice prospect here, in my
Yes,
view.
I agree with you. So you don't think that there, I mean, if, obviously we hope that something happens here pretty soon with HR25 and fair tax, but you don't think there's any hope for any of like Ron DeSantos to come out with a fair tax 2.0 if something doesn't happen with this
Well,
current
when you say
version?
FairTax 2.0, if Trump, here's what I'm prepared to say. If Trump
hmm
and Mike Johnson don't get behind the idea of getting the fair tax on the floor of the House, it won't get on the floor of the House, period.
Yeah.
Okay? Mike Johnson is completely attuned to what Trump is trying to do and what he wants to do. So ultimately, Trump has to be the one who says, I think it's time that we do this. I think it's time that we get this bill passed and that we kick getting rid of the 16th Amendment so that income tax cannot come back without another constitutional amendment.
Yeah.
If Trump, I really wish I could get 30 minutes to talk to Donald Trump
Yeah.
because I believe that I could persuade him to do that. But
I think you
I
could
don't
too.
know.
I would love that.
I really, maybe I'm too arrogant about that, but it's not arrogance. I think that he's a smart guy and I think I know what to say.
Yeah.
I think I
I would love
understand a
for you to
little.
go with Jade because I think between the two of you guys it would get done.
Well, I've got to check this guy Jade out. Now you say, let me make a note here. Hold on,
hmm
my pop open my notes list here.
Yeah. It's Jade Wally, and it's Wallei.
Jade Jade,
Correct? Wally.
Jade, and that's WA.
LL. Yeah.
Okay.
He was a partner at one of the big four. Since he still kind of has that partnership role, there's some sort of continuing. He wasn't able to actually mention the specific company,
Does he
but
have a
it's he's
podcast or what? How do you know this
no,
fact?
he was just on the podcast from yesterday.
He
So
was on
you
your
mentioned Steve,
podcast. Yeah, yeah,
yes, yesterday. So you mentioned Steve and Jim,
yeah,
and then Randy.
yeah.
So they all recommended that Jade be the mouthpiece for them for FairTax.
Gosh, I'm
And
surprised I've
he,
never heard his name.
oh
Wow.
my gosh, I was so impressed with him because one of the things that he did, and if you listen to it, you'll hear it, he laid out how Article 16 actually or not encumbers the right word, but kind of encroaches on all the other articles in the Constitution. He went
Mm-hmm.
article by article and said, and this is from the standpoint of a CPA, so it was very insightful. And
Yeah, I'll be
like I
very
told you,
interested too.
he does these talks. He said at his alma mater, and every single person will come up to him afterward and say, "Where do I sign up? I'm a
Well,
supporter. I'm
I
totally into
wonder
the."
why. I wonder why I've never heard his name before.
I'd never
Gosh.
heard of him either. He said he's kind of new to the movement,
Well,
but
okay,
obviously, yeah.
that might explain it. But I mean, I probably get an email from Stephen Hayes, every 2 or 3 months anyway. So, and
Well, have you heard
you
of the
know,
FairTax guys, Bob and Bob?
oh yeah, I've done their podcast.
Yeah, so he was on there. Jade was on there, and on their 500th episode, Jade, I think, is going to be on there with Steve.
Okay. No,
So that's
I've been on their podcast a couple of times in the past. Now maybe I'll reach out to
yeah.
Bill Rollison and see if he's
I'm
got
not
some
sure if Jade and
contact
Bill know each
information.
other, but yeah,
Really?
Bill. Yeah, I'm going to
Well,
have
then
Bill on too.
I'll just reach out to Steve. I'll just ask Steve to
Yeah,
give me
Steve will know.
an email address or something and see if I can't find out a little bit more about Jade Wally. Maybe I can find out some things. If I might be able to find some things out just on the internet anyway. But no, I'd be very
Yeah.
interested if he's a CPA. He obviously knows a lot about taxation and tax law and so forth. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, Steve Hayes was a tax lawyer, and
Mm-hmm.
he became convinced that the income tax was a wretched game. And it is. It's a game. It's a wretched game.
Yes.
I mean, it's my word. Don't even get me started on talking about taxation in general and the theory of taxation and so forth. But, no, I'll be very interested to get a chance to talk to this guy a little bit. I wish that the advisory board for the Fair Tax Organization has never met.
Really.
Yeah, because everybody's so busy, and Steve's. It's just been difficult to even have a gathering of the advisory board. There's never even been
Right.
a Zoom set. There's never even been a Zoom session of the advisory board.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I spent
it's
a lot of time
crazy.
talking to Adam too, and yeah, it's.
Hmm.
I wish everything get a little bit more coordinated and organized. Um, One of the things I did, this podcast is called Faith, Business, and Politics,
Uh-huh.
and you've mentioned a couple times talking about the Ten Commandments, and
Hmm.
is that something we can kind of tie together, faith and economics? Is there
Well,
any correlation there?
I
Or?
looked at that on your list of topics that you might want to talk about. To be honest with you, um, aside from what I've put in my book about
Mm-hmm.
the relationship of faith to capitalism, which isn't very much really, I'll just
Mm-hmm.
be straightforward and forthright with you. I was raised a New Testament Protestant Christian for my whole life, for my first 18 years of my life. That's what our family was. These
Mm-hmm.
days, I am not a practicing Christian in the sense that I go to church on Sunday and I go to church on Wednesday and I do the usual thing. And the reason why is because I don't know how much you know about deism. Does that ring a bell with you?
Deism, the idea of a deity.
No,
That's the word I want to.
deism. Well, I'll try to sum it up real quickly for you. Deist. Most of the founding fathers were deists, by the way. They believed that there is a God, but they also believed that not all of them, but several of them believed that God is not the God of Abraham, not a providential God, not a God that interferes with and interjects in human life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, and we don't have hours and hours and hours, but I am basically a deist.
Okay.
I am not an atheist. I'm not an agnostic. I think anybody that doesn't believe in God hasn't thought about it very carefully. I mentioned that when we use the word God, we don't know what we're saying to somebody because we don't know
Right.
what's in their minds when you use the word God. A lot of people don't even know what's in their own mind when they use God, except some kind of vague notion of who knows the amalgamation of lots of things. Now, one of my very, very best friends is here in Abingdon is a Christian, and he's a practicing Christian, and he's a genuine practicing Christian. He's not a hypothetical Christian. He lives it, and he's very successful in life and so forth. I play golf with him, and we talk about these things.
Mm-hmm.
I've read and studied Christianity well beyond what most people ever do.
Mm-hmm.
You should see my digital library. I don't use paper books because I can't see them.
Yeah.
Fonts are bloody small. I use audio books, Kindle books, and so forth. And I've made an extensive study of the whole thing. And so to get back to your question about, well, what relationship does faith have to with economics? And the simple, straightforward answer is really not much, if any. Aside
Okay.
from what? Well, I believe, I'm persuaded and wrote a book about it, that those four principles that I call capitalism, private property, voluntary exchange, freedom, and just law, those are necessary conditions for moral behavior of a political economy, in a political.
Okay. Well, I know we don't have hours and hours to talk about it,
Yeah.
but in the very first podcast I did with Frank, I'm so happy that we got, because I've spent hours talking to Frank Wagner. He's one of the people, initially involved with FairTax in 2005. So I was able to ask him this question because we've never talked about this before. And he told me he's a Sikh. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you've heard of that, but it's actually the
I've
fifth
heard of it. I don't know
largest.
much about it, but
Well, it was fascinating to me. I'd never heard about it in my entire life.
that's
And since
probably
then,
that's probably a particular flavor of Hinduism, isn't it?
no, it's separate than that. So that's
It's
what he
separate from
actually said.
Hinduism. Ah,
Yeah, so we actually
interesting.
went into it for about 20 minutes, and he is a Sikh. Sikh is the fifth largest, but he went into a lot of the details
Mm-hmm.
regarding Sikh. They have to carry a blade, they have to carry a little comb, and it's very different in that Christianity, it's kind of like turn the cheek, but with Sikhism, it's the opposite. You carry that blade to defend yourself and also people that need defending in the way of if they're helpless or something like that. It was very
Mm-hmm.
interesting. So is there,
That's
we don't have
fascinating.
to go into deism for hours, but is there any way you could just kind of, because here again, this is so great that I've started this. I don't really know a lot about deism. And of course I can go
No,
on
but you can.
chat.
It's easy to find. Yeah, just jump
No,
on
I know,
your
I'm sure,
AI
but
and
from your
ask it.
perspective, is it more?
Yeah.
Is there other deists that you connect with, or is there certain
No,
principles of deism? Okay, but is there
not
any way just to
really.
kind of go into it a little bit, what it means to
It's
you, or
the proposition. Thomas Paine, who was
okay,
one of the writers in the colonial period in the founding, was probably one of the most famous deists, and he wrote a book. Oh, let's see if I can think of the title. It's not popping right into my
that's
mind.
okay.
It's easy to find, though. And the basic proposition of deism is that there's a creator.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the creator is not providential and doesn't
Mm-hmm.
interact with individuals or the world at a personal level. It's
Okay.
kind of like, okay, that's to use an analogy, there was a clockmaker, he made the clock and he lets it run.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I've thought about that concept a lot. That's so interesting you bring that up, is the idea that even if you're a Christian or whatnot, and you believe that God is the creator, I feel like it's almost a little bit arrogant to feel like that he created once and then he was done. I mean, I'm not saying I'm this
Well,
great creator, but anytime I've ever created something, I've then created again.
Yeah.
So I don't know
I
what
put
deism or
it
how.
this way, Justin. For myself, the way I look at it is, yes, I believe that there is a creator. I also believe I know nothing about that creator. And I talk a little bit about this in my book, not a lot, but a little bit, because if you get a copy, in fact, I'd be happy to send you a copy. I've got I, I get I can get copies of my own book pretty cheap.
Hmm.
They're cheap anyway on Amazon, but I could send you a copy if you send me your mail address.
Okay.
Be happy to do that, and it'd be a faster way for you to understand a little bit about where I'm coming from and some of the things that we have in fact
So do you
talked about.
talk about deism in your book?
Not really. I don't talk about
Okay.
deism. I talk
Okay.
about there's a chapter on how we know because see the outline of my book was that if I'm going to if I'm going to make proposition about morality and capitalism, I have to spend some time talking about morality.
Hmm.
The first half of the book does that. Part of being able to explain some ideas or think through some ideas about morality, you have to
Hmm.
address the question of how do we know anything? If I'm going to say
Yeah.
here's how we can know what morality is and what's a moral behavior and what isn't, then we have to talk about, well, how do we know anything? Okay. Well, my proposition, the reason I'm a deist is because so far as my own life experience, God's never spoken to me.
Right.
Okay.
I'm with you on that.
Okay. And so how do everything that anybody thinks, anything that I might be able to say, well, here's what I think I know about God is coming from testimony, isn't it? It's coming
Yeah. Well,
from
yeah, about like like what do you think about the literature? How does deism, all the different works of literature, and I'm not talking about just the Bible, but all the different literature, how does deist kind of associate with that, or how does that play into the religion, if you will?
gosh, I don't even know how to address that because I,
Okay.
I haven't made a deep study of deism. I just know what it is. The
Yeah.
basic proposition is, yeah, a deist believes there is a God, but a
Hmm.
deist also believes I don't know anything about God. I have no way
Okay.
of knowing because I have no experience with God. If I had, and in my book, I put it this way, Justin, if I had some kind of a spiritual experience that was personal,
Hmm.
I would believe that probably, wouldn't I?
Yeah, maybe, or unless you could
Maybe.
explain it away or something. Yeah.
Exactly. It becomes
Yeah.
very dicey here, but I've never had anything like that. So,
Yeah, me
if
neither.
my friend DJ, who's the Christian I was telling you about, he
Hmm.
definitely believes that God has intervened in his life. Okay, well, I'm going to say, DJ, I believe that if you're telling me that's it, I'm believing that he has for you. I'm not
Hmm.
going to say, that would be really arrogant, wouldn't it, to tell somebody, no, what you took to be a spiritual experience that was supernatural or something, that's just wrong, right? You didn't actually have that. But
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, anytime somebody talks to me about that kind of stuff, I don't let it rest. I mean, I go deeper and say, well, what do you mean? Did you hear something audible in your ear? Did you get a feeling? I mean, for me, it's I want to because I want to understand it. I want to understand
yeah,
exactly what you're talking about. And I mean, I hate to
absolutely.
summarize all my conversations, but it's typically something that's not you can't grasp it. They don't have an answer. They didn't hear something audibly in their ear.
Right,
They didn't
right,
see God visually. There wasn't something with
right,
their faculties. It
right.
was something.
Exactly.
So to me, it's a little bit. It's a tough one, but
No, it
I'm really
is.
curious about when it comes to the literature and all that. I'm not trying to argue one way or the other. I wonder how a deist, and I'm not expecting an answer right now because it sounds like something you don't know or whatever. But I'm going to definitely be looking into this just to kind of see how deists kind of relate to the literature. If they actually believe that the literature is like divinely inspired, or if it's something that more of this literature has just come about by a human's efforts and there's really no divinity, if you will, involved. I'm super interested in this now, and I'm going to do my own homework after the podcast. This is why I like to have, because sometimes it's not really appropriate to ask people about faith and all that, but that's one of the reasons
Right,
I wanted to name this podcast the way I did, is so that we can have these kind of discussions, and I really appreciate you
right.
sharing.
I'm just looking up here. The book that Thomas Paine wrote that you might want to get a copy of, or you can probably get it for free somewhere on the internet, is The
Hmm.
Age of Reason. The
Yeah.
Age of Reason, where he basically, Paine argued strongly. I'm just reading now off of what I just pulled up here on my AI, against organized religion and the authority of churches, especially Christianity in its institutional form. He defended deism, the belief that reason and observation of the natural world are the best ways to understand God without reliance on asserted, revealed testimony
Hmm.
like the Bible. And he criticizes, I've read it, it's a very interesting read actually. He criticized the Bible, saying it contained contradictions and couldn't be trusted as divine revelation. Now, see, this is the point. This is what a deist believes. A deist believes that there is no such thing as divine revelation. And how am I to
Hmm.
know if it is? How am I,
Yeah.
somebody says, well, this is the word of God. It was revealed to me. Really?
Hmm.
Okay. How am I to know that?
Right.
Okay. Anyway, I would direct you, if you're interested in the ideas of deism, it's pretty easy to pull up some stuff about it in general, and then you would want to read Paine's The Age of Reason.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right here. He actually published a few different books, and that was one of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, he
It's
did.
very, and of
Well,
course the.
his most famous thing he published was Common Sense, which was a political pamphlet, right, back
Hmm.
in the revolutionary days. Common Sense, but he also wrote some other books, just as you say.
Yeah. And I mean, the Christian would say, it has to do with faith. And that's why I think it's so important to actually, this is maybe getting a little personal, but my dad would always talk about, it's so important to have faith. And I'd always say, like, what do you, faith in what? To me, it's what you have the faith in. It's not a general just faith. I mean, if I have faith that the sky is red, doesn't mean that it's red. To me, it's all about what you have the faith in. So I think that modern Christians would say, well, that's where you got to have this faith or whatever. But it's like, gosh, I,
Well,
I want to do that, but I'm a skeptic. I want to get to the bottom of
right.
things here. I want to
Of course
understand.
you do.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, actually, I have a few a paragraph or two about faith in my little book, because
Hmm.
it is in that chapter where we talk about how we know anything. Well, one of the simple truth of the matter is most of the things we take ourselves to know, we know because we were taught it. In other words,
Right.
testimony from somebody. I didn't
Hmm.
come up with most of what I take myself to know. I was taught it. Well, the same thing is true when it comes to faith, when we're talking about religion, rather, not faith, but religion. Mostly people were taught something.
Yeah.
That's just only later, when you get older and you start thinking more seriously about some of these kinds of issues, do you begin to push back a little bit and say, well, how do I know that? And you,
Right.
I've read a whole series of books by an author who's one of the world's foremost biblical scholars. His name is Bart Ehrman. He's written a series of books about the Bible, and he started out being a complete total Christian, fundamentalist Christian. But then he went on and pursued his interests in theology and became, earned a doctorate and all that. And he teaches at UNC and has for many years now, and wrote a whole bunch of books about the
Hmm.
Bible. And it's fascinating, actually, when uh, they're historical in the context of how a historian looks at the Bible, and
Hmm.
what can we say about this book and that book, and who actually wrote that and didn't write that. Was there really a guy named Jesus? And turns out there were a lot of guys named Jesus, as it happens. But
Hmm.
it turns out that there is a vast literature, uh, not only about the Bible, but about alternative books that didn't make it into the Bible. They're not part of the canon and all
Right.
that. I've done a lot of that research and read a lot of those books, and here I am sitting here today before you saying, well, there are very logical reasons to believe in a creator, in a God, in a something besides mass and energy.
Hmm.
Okay, materialism is what that's called.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there are reasons to think otherwise, and if you just on the basis of thought alone, but that doesn't get you to the God of Abraham, does it?
No.
No. What gets you to the God of Abraham? Testimony. Well, testimony of who? Well, we're not even sure. As it
Yeah.
turns out, we're not even sure. People talk about the Gospels, the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and
Mm-hmm.
John. Well, guess what? They didn't write those, and
Yeah.
biblical scholars who spend their whole lives studying the Bible say that they are in agreement about that.
You mean that they
Okay,
were somebody else actually? So like for instance, like Dr. Luke, who wrote Luke and Acts, supposedly he was he
supposedly.
was he was talking to somebody else and they pinned it. Is that what you mean? Or what do you mean? Like
No,
Luke didn't?
there are, gosh, my memory's so bad, Justin, that I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to tell you more than I know, but for sure. But there are several books in the New Testament, for example, that everybody absolutely agrees that was not written by the person whose name is on
Okay.
it. Okay.
Like actual gospel books. Like you don't maybe like for
Yes.
instance, like Mark. Maybe Mark didn't actually write the book of Mark. Maybe somebody else pinned
Yeah.
that, or
Somebody else's. I don't mean they were just a scribe. I mean that it was just Bart Ehrman has a whole book about books of the Bible that we know were forgeries.
okay.
We know that they weren't written by that person.
Mm-hmm.
They were
That's
forged.
fascinating. Yeah, I've
It
never
is.
really looked into that.
Well,
I'm going
if
to
you're
now.
interested, if you're interested in this kind of thing,
What
Google.
was the author again?
It's Bart, Bart,
Mm-hmm.
and his last name is Ehrman. Let me just, I'm a real bad speller, so I'm going to pull it up
That's
real
okay.
quick
Ehrman. I can
here.
probably
And
figure it out. Bart Ehrman.
well, it's either Ehrman. Let me see if that's what it is. I can never remember. It's
Man,
Ehr.
got it.
Bart Ehrman.
Okay, got it.
He's
Okay.
got a ton of stuff out there,
Yeah,
books
I'm
that
gonna check out his writings
he is
because yeah, I've never
absolutely.
heard the. I've never heard. I mean, I've thought a lot about the idea of who maybe actually scribed this or who was writing it or pinned it. Those kind of thought. I've had a lot of those thoughts, but never actually thought of the idea that like First Corinthians wasn't written by Paul. I've always thought that was so.
Well,
Anyway,
yeah, well,
this is why I love having this and
yeah,
having these discussions, new ideas.
yeah. Well, Paul's a whole. He's got a lot of books that are attributed to Paul. I don't
Hmm.
know, something like 12 or 13 or something.
Yeah, the
And
majority of the New Testament.
I think a couple of them are in the set that we absolutely know he didn't write them.
Okay.
When I say absolutely no, what does that mean? That means that people who spend their whole lives studying this agree that no, he didn't write that.
Okay.
To the,
Yeah. Well, I think our time is kind of getting close. There was only two other things. No, no, sorry. If you have more things, I'll spend all day talking to you if you want. But I only had
no,
two more things
I'm
on my
going to have to
list.
move
Yeah.
on, but we'll touch on, try to be very brief here about one or two more.
Well, we can stop here, but I was going to kind of, and the reason I was going to bring this up is I guess I was listening to I Googled the most popular podcast of all time, and it was Elon Musk and Joe Rogan, 2018. And so I was kind
Really?
of listening. Yeah, I was kind of
That's
listening to them,
fascinating.
yeah, and a lot of it was discussing artificial intelligence. And
Yeah.
Elon was kind of saying, what was going to happen with it. And now I guess Elon has Grok and Twitter, and
Mm-hmm.
he
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any of that during that podcast. But
Yeah.
I wanted, and you kind of touched on the fact that they asked, or you said something, you were using a different AI than ChatGPT.
Yeah, I'm
Is
using
there
Gemini.
anything, yeah, Gemini, is there anything, because back in 2018, it was like AI was going to become HAL and take over the world. And maybe that's happening slowly, or I don't know, but
No,
I use it.
it, yeah, it appears to me that what's happening right now, at least, is that people are beginning to recognize the limitations of large language models, and some of the sort of wide-eyed hand waving has been dispelled. But I'd say we're certainly in the infancy of AI, even
Yeah.
though people have been working in AI and getting us to where we are now for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't hit the mainstream scene until about, 2 or 3 years ago.
Right. It seems like one of the limiting factors also is like what I was talking about with these data centers. I'm in construction, so
Yeah,
it seems like there's just because, and one of the main ingredients that you need to kind of expand this, and maybe they didn't see it before, maybe they did, I don't know, but is qualified people to understand electronics and understand how
sure.
to hook those systems together. And what they're finding is there's just a real lack of skilled people that are able to really like propel this forward. So I know that's something that maybe I don't know if they didn't think about before or what, but
I
you know
don't
what,
know. It's an awful lot to try to think about without experience, isn't it?
right,
Without,
exactly.
you learn so much as somebody who's in construction. You could read about how to build a house or how to do something in construction all you want to. Until you do it, you don't really learn much, do you?
I agree with you 100%. Well, let's call it there, unless there isn't, if there is one or two things that I didn't touch on that you really want to touch on, but I think we covered a lot, and I really appreciate your time. And
Well, you're welcome, and I enjoyed it. I always enjoy chatting to
good,
somebody that's
good.
interested in the fair tax and some economics and so forth. So
Yeah, I'm excited about
we'll
this one. I think this is gonna. There were some really good things discussed, so I'm excited about promoting it and publishing it.
do you edit it and then before you put it up or
So
what?
I use a software called Riverside.fm, which
Mm-hmm.
obviously we're on right now, so you know that. I don't know if our listeners
Mm-hmm.
do, but it does do some automatic editing in that it'll take out like
Okay.
and like
Yeah.
pauses, so it kind of shortens everything down and takes out some of those filler words, and then it kind of tightens the sound up a little bit to sound a little more studio quality. But beyond that, I haven't really done any editing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Frank on the first one asked me to edit a few parts out, and it was pretty easy because we had kind of made some blunders and it was super simple.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
again, I'm not going to publish anything until you approve it in writing. So I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't publish
Well,
anything
that's all.
until you give me your written consent.
I'm not too particular. I say a lot of things
Yeah,
in the classroom.
yeah, I hear you.
So, all
Okay.
right. Well,
Well,
Justin, it
is
was very
there
nice
actually
to.
before we get off, is there any ways that you would, if somebody did have questions for you, do you have some sort of like a Twitter handle or some way that people can reach out, or do you prefer they would reach out to you a different way, or
I would prefer
or
just
actually on your
email.
Substack maybe, right? Or
Yeah, yeah. Just email is
okay.
fine too.
Well, Jade was going to do that too. I've kind of found with email, spammers get a hold of it. I don't know how it works with if you mention it on a podcast. I don't know, but I don't. I really wouldn't want you to get spammed and things like that. I think I
Yeah.
put Jade's
Yeah.
Twitter
Don't. Yeah.
handle. He said, yeah, but it seems like you have a real good presence on Substack, so maybe that's something that I
Yeah.
can
Well, I
put on
don't.
there.
I don't. Yeah. I don't spend any time at all on Twitter. I have a Twitter
Right.
account and I have a handle and all that, but I don't spend any time at all on Twitter.
So what
I
about your
do.
Substack? Can I mention that one?
Yeah. The Substacks. There are two. I have a Substack in my name.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, is David L. Kendall, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
use, you know, I I post a note, what they call a note on Substack once in a while. Most of what I
Mm-hmm.
do on Substack is write a comment to somebody else's note. If I,
Mm-hmm.
it scrolls just like Facebook or something, the notes do. And if I read a note and something pops into my mind, I might make a comment. Every once in a while, I will make a post to my article on Substack, which is called Economics and Freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and in fact, you can read my whole book. I've published it on the Substack, Economics and Freedom. Anybody that goes on Substack can read my whole book for free, chapter at a time. I've put every chapter in the book and some other things about it on in that Substack, which is called Economics and Freedom. And so, yeah, somebody could go on Substack and they're able to write a comment on any of those publications that are there on that Substack.
You mentioned you like to listen to things on audiobook. Is your book on audio or only on print?
It just became available in an audio format on
Okay.
Amazon. I don't think it's not on Audible, but on Amazon. If you go on Amazon, you can. It's being done by a bot. In other words,
Yeah.
it's
Is it
there's
finished
not.
now, or can somebody listen to
Yeah,
it
you
through the
can go
almost?
on it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you can go on
Okay.
there and you can listen to it. I tried it a little bit and I thought it was pretty boring to listen to
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good because some people just don't
because
want
it's
to read
all
it; they want to listen to it.
being read in one voice and it's just like
Right.
Siri or something, right?
Yeah. Just kind of monotone.
Whereas if you get a copy of the book, you'll see, well, if you go on the Substack, you don't have to get a copy because you can see it right there. There are dialogues between
Hmm.
a guy named Solon and a guy named Tyro, not Tyrus. I'm thinking of Tyrus. Tyro. And then so there's a narrative voice, and then there's a Solon voice, and there's a Tyro voice. And the bot that the Amazon used to make an audio version of the book is just all one voice. And so it makes it a little less interesting that way. Because when you read a dialogue that's been put in a book, you'll mentally create an image of the interlocutors.
Right. Yeah. A little
Just
more entertaining.
your mind just will do that. They'll start to develop a personality for you
Yeah.
when
Exactly.
you're reading it. But that doesn't. I wasn't too impressed with the Audible thing, the audio version, but it's there.
Yeah. All right, David. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome, Justin.
I'm
Take
sure
care,
we'll
buddy.
talk to you soon, but you
All
too.
right,
Talk
bye
to you
bye.
soon. Bye bye.